first and most successful Starfinder live play shows. And he's also the author of The Fate of the Fifth, the first volume of Attack of the Swarm, which is out this month. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for having me. Very excited. The longest running successful Starfinder podcast. I like the sound of that. We've not thrown in the towel yet because we just got to over 100 episodes, and
that's fantastic. Congratulations, 100 episodes.
I still don't believe that.
Now each episode is how long? Like about
hour to 2 hours, somewhere there. I think we're usually an hour and a half.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's about 150 hours of content.
When you put it like that, and we have interviews just like this one that go on some episodes, and like little extra bits here and there. But for the most part, that's our gameplay sessions. We play late at night, Monday nights normally, and we play for about 2 hours.
Right on. Well, that's cool. So I want to talk about Cosmic Crit and kind of the difference between podcasting a show or live playing a show, streaming a show, and running it in your home table. But before we get there, I want to talk about Fate of the Fifth and kind of how you came to AP. Yeah, because this is out. And it's for those folks that don't know, Attack of the Swarm is, I believe, our 5th adventure path for Starfinder. It starts this month with volume 1 in a 6-volume series. It takes the characters from levels 1 all the way up to level 13 at the very end. Mm-hmm. And it is focused on the Swarm, which is one of the great campaign antagonists of the Starfinder setting. And we've had Swarm monsters in Alien Archives, and they have a big write-up in the core rulebook and stuff. And they're critical to the Pact World setting because that's how the Pact Worlds and the Viscarium became non-aggressors, right? They have
enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Exactly. And so the developer on this adventure path is Jason Keeley, who's my co-worker and works on the other side of the cubicle from me. So how did Keeley come to find you to write Fate of the Fifth, the first adventure in this path?
I was obviously super lucky to have written some stuff for Paizo before, some back matter, including some monsters.
Right, you have an article in Dawn of Flame.
Yep.
In Firestarter, the first episode of Dawn of Flame.
Yeah, book volume 13.
Yeah,
Firestarters, which just got done playing with some fans of the podcast through our Patreon, which is a lot of fun. Really liked book 1, but I got to do the Saren Ray chapter and what Saren Ray is like in Starfinder, which is kind of like the first of those articles. Hopefully they'll do all the religions eventually, but get to see what they're like in a science fiction setting. Which is a lot of fun. And I feel like, I got the best one because I got the one that is like right there in the center of the Pact Worlds on the Burning Archipelago.
Yeah, and Saren Ray has got a long history of being critical to Pathfinder. And very, very important deity. Our iconic cleric worships her and so on. In Pathfinder, So anyway, so you got to update that, and that was incredibly important. How did the first? I'm just curious now because I wrote the Asana article on that same issue. So
yeah,
how did the adventure go? Did Firestarters go okay?
Firestarters went great. We've already moved on to book 2. Just starting some of that early on now, but before I got the books in my hand, I was as skeptic as I think some of the other Paizo office folk were when they were like, the entire adventure is on the sun,
Right.
But more so than almost any of the other places outlined in the Pact World so far, I really think the Burning Archipelago is like this great little ecosystem of different planets where you can have a different kind of adventure in every single bubble.
Yeah.
And you can just do the entire thing in the archipelago. Obviously it's not, but
that's interesting too, because like you say, because the archipelago is relatively small, we can do an article on each dome, sort of, you know, in every adventure, and pretty soon the whole archipelago is detailed and pretty close.
Yeah, it's filled up. Is it in? There's some in a Asana Town article, which is really good. There's some in one of the back matter articles on, I think, the Bazaar marketplace, and there's like bits and places that outline like restaurants and different organizations that are on the Sun. Just really makes it feel fleshed out, and I mean, I can't wait for, you know, other packed places to get that kind of treatment. Just because that's just tools to give GMs if they want to make their own adventures or they want to go off book. Did your players go off book for this? We had some side adventures. I'm playing with 6 players, which is officially the most I've ever played with. Okay. And we incorporated some background adventures with Iomedae and the Solarian Temple that's in Asana Town. Yep. Who now in our canon has an 8-year-old Lashuntan Solarian master at its top. So he's kind of like a little Dalai Lama figure. But yeah, we had a good time exploring. I think that's going to continue on. Now we're in Stellacuna, and eventually, you know, we'll get to Verdion and some of the other. I was able to carve out some time potentially to do some writing, especially right up front. I got options on like which book to write in the adventure path, and my number one choice was book number 1. Yeah. Because of, you know, various reasons. The kind of like the general outline of what it was going to be really interested me. The war aspect of it. Did you want? It's often just talked about among the path writers that the first adventure is often the most important because it sort of sets the tone for the rest of the path. Is that what you wanted? Did you want that additional kind of input? I mean, it's awesome to, you know, be like the lead off batter, I guess, for the AP. I definitely am going to be like the drummer boy, the trumpeter for this entire AP, because as awesome as the first book is, I think each subsequent book gets crazier and more fun, just from the descriptions and the bits I've read book 2 already in full at this point that came out just recently. But yeah, each book is honestly better than the last. And they build into a very crazy war epic, whereas mine I think is, if you're a fan of war movies or stories, I grew up with, you know, Audie Murphy and other classic, you know, John Wayne and World War II kind of action films, and then, you know, matured into like reading actual books on World War II. I think there's a lot of that feeling in here. Okay. In Fate of the Fifth. I remember my colleague Leo Glass, who's my fellow editor. Mm-hmm. He was really impressed with the sort of commanding officer character you invented, who, when we meet her, she's getting her leg amputated. Yeah. So I mean, that is you know, a very sad reality of war that, these kind of massive injuries, you can wait for them to heal, or when the technology exists to replace it with a cybernetic limb immediately and continue on the battlefield. You probably see a lot of cybernetic limbs or other prosthetics out there. Yeah. In fact, I feel like if that happened to a player in the game, that would be their option. If they had unfortunately a severe wound or something, chop off an arm, they would have to fabricate something out of UPBs and keep going. Especially like if they're like a two-handed weapon wielder, they would be in unless they're Kasatha or something in dire straits. I feel like if I was a GM of a Kasatha that got a severe wound, 2 arms are coming off immediately. We shouldn't get that big of a bonus. It's like I could do this all day. But
so Keeley reached out to you and asked if you had summer free, and you made it work.
If I had basically the next 3 months, because at that point they were looking to get out some contracts and get people started writing, at least for book 1. And I said yes. The timing wise, the end of when my final draft was going to be done coincided with me going on vacation to a friend's wedding, and I just resolved myself to like get it done before then, so I would have that week off and not have to worry about it. And it worked out great because I took a little bit of extra time off around there. I took time off from the podcast, from work, and got all the final draft done. And that focus really helped drive it home to the finish, to the point where I was like, okay, well, I feel like this is like a B- B final draft, but honestly, not too much stuff was changed.
Okay. All right. That's one of my follow-up questions. I'm curious. What I don't want to make you feel like you're on the spot talking about revisions, because sometimes editorial authorial relations about revisions can be a bit tense. But is there anything that you felt that you wrote in the original manuscript that didn't show up in the final version that you wanted to share, or that you missed?
Well, no, it's very interesting. I mean, I could have written like 20 pages past the limit and just said F you to the editors. You have to cut stuff. But I did not. Yeah, because I could have just kept writing forever for this kind of story. Just little side things. I was very excited that some kind of world building stuff did make it in and made it into like sidebars.
Right on, good.
Including like weather pattern stuff for the planet during the winter time, as an optional thing for GMs if they wanted to add in severe winter storms. There's rules in the CRB for that. Military jargon got in, like a whole sidebar on that. I was very excited about. Not a lot was cut. I think for the most part, all the editing choices kind of strengthened what was left behind instead. There was a small bit of like a skill check section that was cut in favor of some other skills, which is it's fine. But
for those who are listening and don't know, the Fate of the Fifth follows the is it the Fifth Company?
Battalion.
Fifth Battalion, and they're the survivors of this famous battle with the Swarm. The Swarm are invading Suskalon, and they're portrayed in the adventure as essentially unstoppable. The Swarm are going to conquer the planet. There's no real question of that.
Yeah, and I think the way I had it in my mind is, the Swarm probably, if they had all their forces together at once, could have just gone down and completely taken over in one night if they wanted. But they didn't. They attacked like certain points and set up kind of like beachheads, and pushed slowly. And there are kind of story reasons in the AP why they didn't just obliterate the planet. But for the most part, it turns into a very dogged ground war. One of the base soldiers the Swarm uses literally burrows underground. So nuking them from the air, not a great option when most of the forces can just dive down deep. But Not too much was cut for time. I think some of the suggestions I got from Jason Keeley
Yep.
made the AP like a ton better. He looked at parts and added some new rules in and some various things. And
Can you give us a specific example?
there's some vehicle action in the AP and a lot more kind of faith given to the players as to like routes they can take in certain areas. So anytime you get sandboxy stuff like that in, I don't want to put that in as the author because I don't want that's like you guys deal with this. But if Paizo wants to put that in, I'm all for it. Originally, there was a captain in the AP that I think I suggested at first he be an orc, like a full space orc. Yeah. But wisely, it was suggested, somebody else, a different kind of race, and that's how I landed on a Vesk captain, which makes more sense than I can possibly.
Yeah,
like a veteran of the original Swarm War.
The best character. Now that character was originally an orc.
Yeah, I think a half orc or a full-blooded orc. Alien Archive 2 had just come out. I was like, no one's done like an full orc character. So, but there wasn't really a reason for him to be on that planet. Whereas Jal Damarik, the character that you guys get to see in the AP, makes a lot of sense.
He's a great character too.
He wants to come back and he wants more Swarm. He didn't get enough of the Swarm fight originally, so he volunteers as like a private and works his way back up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that little bit where he originally was very highly regarded and he wanted to work his way up. So he intentionally got a lower rank and went in all over again. That's interesting. So, so let's rewind again and talk about Cosmic Crit because I have. So I've played and run in live stream games, and I've watched quite a few of them, of course. And what occurs to me, and I guess it's because I'm thinking about how the show is put on and how it's played, and I wonder. To me, it seems like this is a long preamble that the audience for a game that's streamed is different than the audience for a game that's around your table. And that is when you're playing with your table, the players are the audience. You're right. You're making a game with them, for them, with them together. And they're going to do things that they enjoy that the other characters at the players at the table enjoy. But when the audience for that show explodes to a popular streaming show, the people at the table become performers.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily the audience anymore. They are part of the performance. And so, for example, I might never kill a player character at my table because that's tons of work. And, like I lose all that plot. But if the audience gets into it, if they enjoy the drama of a player character dying and they're like, oh no, like Johnny died.
Yeah.
Then it could bring ratings. It gets more people to watch and everybody enjoys it and they get into it more. And that's an extreme example because we still don't really kill player characters very often. But the sense of the players at your team can also participate in that. They might do things that they would not otherwise do because they have an audience watching now. And I'm curious if you've noticed or if you feel differently. What are your thoughts about this? What do you think?
Yeah, I can't speak too much to player actions around the table as, on stream versus IRL table. I am a player in currently Return of the Rune Lords.
Yep.
And I kind of treat that the same way, a lot of the same energy I hope I bring to this, where Patrick makes a lot of snarky content and comments around the table, whereas my character, who is a paladin of Sarenrae, is a beacon of light and is hopefully the moral compass of a party. But I definitely am trying to make my friends laugh around the table. I think in the podcast, all the players on Cosmic Crit are trying to generate a great story with their characters, but at the same time, the majority of us have been friends for about 15 years,
Okay.
and we are trying to get a rise out of one another. We're trying to either cajole someone into a reaction or make a joke that'll make everyone laugh. If you make the GM laugh, I mean, you get a ton of cool points. I try to keep it cool, but we've had a couple of recordings of late where I've just lost it and laughed for a good 30 seconds.
But it sounds to me like you feel like you're really just videotaping a live game, like a regular game. Like you don't really run it any differently than you would around a table.
Well, I will say it's for IRL tables versus recorded tables.
Yeah.
It's like a marathon or a sprint versus a marathon, right?
Okay.
No.
Go on. Tell me what you
IRL is a marathon. I usually play longer at IRL tables, and it's a little more relaxed because whatever, take as many bathroom breaks as you want, or go off and go check on the stew, how the stew's doing. But for everyone's time when we're recording, we try to keep that to a minimum, and to make editing a little bit easier, try and keep bathroom breaks, I guess, to a minimum. That sounds weird to say, but like in general, like if we have to break and look up a rule, I usually don't leave that in the podcast if it takes like 5 minutes for us to like come to some kind of decision. You just hear us like, oh, we've magically figured out this rule in 30 seconds.
You're aware of the passage of time and that impact of your casualness.
Yeah, I mean,
or sense of delay.
I play about twice as long in many of my IRL tables, or at least like a half hour or so longer than our records, because I don't think anyone wants to hear. I mean, some people want to hear 4 hours of podcast back to back. I know there's Critical Role has to do like these huge. They do long streams. I feel like there's a lot of in between stuff in there too. But yeah, that's similar to like an IRL table. Whereas Cosmic Crit, we're trying to get, I guess, more listenable chunks of action.
Yeah, most people don't have 4 hours all at once to listen to a show. I mean, I do. I listen to one of the other Starfinder podcasts that's going through Dawn of Flame right now.
Yeah, non-standard action. That's great. They do a nice break in the middle as well, so it's divided up into chunks. Yeah. But they're usually, I mean, they're gunning through Dawn of Flame. They're going really fast, and I mean, compared, I guess, to us because they do longer records. But that's the closer, like I said, to my IRL table. As far as lengths of time go, I'd be interested. There's not really, I guess, a lot of market research, like how long do most people play for? Like I've heard people playing 7-8 hour games. I'm like, that's a day of work. I don't know how you can do that.
Well, I mean, the only guideline I really have on that as far as length of play is a Starfinder scenario.
Yeah, right? It's perfect length.
We make those Starfinder scenarios to last about 3 to 4 hours. That's all right. But some crews get really good and do them really fast. Other than the time spent and the awareness of time, like we want to make sure that we're moving quickly and we don't want to waste the listener's time.
Do people act very different?
Do people act different? You don't change the plot. You run the game.
Yeah.
The same as you would run around a table.
I think so. I maybe prep a little bit differently in both, as far as trying to personalize interactions with the characters. To a great degree. Sometimes I just wing things like that because I think it's more fun in the moment to embarrass myself than be perfectly prepped. But yeah, I am also GMing a Pathfinder First Edition game with people online, including Tyler, who's on the podcast, and it is it's a little easier going. There's still a good deal of role playing and things like that, but I besides the passage of time aspect, I think there is just a understanding that people don't have to ham it up or make every turn in their combat, seem super exciting. It's like, I'm just going to go up and I'm going to hit this thing instead of describing completely.
When there are no cameras, you can just say I attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
The end of book 5 of Iron Fang Invasion, which I believe the author's name escapes me. It's not Thurston. Thurston did book 4. What?
Which adventure are we talking about?
Book 5 of Iron Fang Invasion is one I just wrapped up. And it's great. It's a lot of fun. But during the final combat, like, some very epic things happened that, if they had happened on a podcast, would have been like 5 minutes of explanation and like build up to a very exciting willpower save for like the big bad of this entire book, which I rolled a 1 on. I think that I could have only failed this super important will save on a 1, 2, or 3. So I would have built that up for tension. I just like threw it out there and it's like, all right, let me roll will, because I was like, oh, there's no way I could fail this. But obviously I would have hyped that for the audience. Like,
is this Prisoners of the Blight?
Prisoners of the Blight. Yes, I have the book right here.
That's written by my boss, Amanda.
Oh yeah, of course, Amanda. I knew her and Thursday and
Amanda Heyman is managing developer of the Starfinder line right now. Of
course. I think I've talked to her about the book too when we talked on Cosmic Crit.
Oh, really? Good.
I was very excited to get to Prisoners of the Blight. So yeah, there's just different things would happen, for placing import on some of those combat rolls, and I would build up, some of the dark magic a wizard is conjuring before it happened, as opposed to just be like, why don't you make me a fortitude save? Okay, you pass. Well, but yeah, I don't think about it too often, but I GM the podcast and I GM Just for Fun online back to back, usually 2 nights a week. And I guess I do switch hats a little bit between those two.
But most of the muscle memory, it sounds like, is mostly the same.
Yeah, I've been GMing Pathfinder continuously for probably 6 or 7 years, and the APs, the vast majority of that time. So yeah, there's just and that has been almost all IRL, just kind of around a table or relaxing. So yeah, I've definitely got a style, and it just that just turned up to 10 when I record.
Oh, more energy.
I think so. And it's great because it's turned Monday night, when we normally record, into a much more like, I'm very excited for Monday night normally now, as opposed to finally the day is done.
All right. So one more GMing question. So I'm going to confess to you something. So when I came onto this job, and I started as a developer in the Star Chamber only a couple of months ago, and is at Gen Con, when I met you at Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
And Keeley told me, he said, listen, you need to listen to a podcast. You need to listen to a live stream show. Pick one. He didn't get pick one, listen to it, because you're going to hear how they change the adventures we write during play. Right. And it's something which we as writers and as developers, writing an adventure path is a real tough challenge, because the players don't want to be railroaded, right? Players often say, we want to have choices. And that's true. They need to have meaningful choices, but we don't have unlimited pages. Pathfinder scenarios adventures are pretty, Starfinder adventures are pretty short.
Both normally.
and their a Starfinder adventure is only about 35 pages. Yeah. And it's got to take you from usually 2 levels, right? So from like 1st to 3rd, or 9th to 11th, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of encounters in a pretty short space, which means that we don't have room to write options, right?
Yeah. Well, especially options that are like, well, you take path A or B, and if you do, you just never see what happens in path A if you go down B, and that is just wasted space for the book. And also the players might be angry. It's like, well, why can't we do both? Sometimes they want to see every single corner of a map, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious how you, as a GM, how much you go off book when you run these adventures in your Cosmic Crit podcast, for example.
Really not super often. In Dead Suns, I replaced some battles, some fights with an alternative fight that kind of tied more into the character's story sometimes.
Okay, so you're adjusting the story and the adversaries maybe to make them more personal, related to the PCs.
Yeah. And I talked to Stephen Rennie McFarland about book of 5. Hero of Dead Suns, and there was a fight that happened on the ship, which I changed out because it wasn't really a big distraction, but it introduced like an outsider character that I was having difficulties like tying into kind of the greater story. I think it works perfectly fine in the adventure path, opening up like to different worlds, but I replaced that with kind of like a bounty hunter fight, people that were trying to kill specifically the PCs, and just, I mean, it worked well for me. I think I wrote Fate of the Fifth hopefully to where GMs can do something similar if they want. Can like say, okay, well, there's this fight that is kind of like isolated in this one instance, and people should feel free to replace that if they want. And it doesn't change the grand story, the overarching plot of the adventure path. Yeah. And
please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like most adventure paths have sections that are like that. And yeah, GMs, both experienced and inexperienced, I feel should feel comfortable saying, okay, well, this was a CR3 encounter that for whatever reason, I don't think we are going to play. Maybe just throw another CR3 encounter or something else similar in that spot.
Fate of the Fifth benefits from a very clear, visible enemy with basically overwhelming force, and the players have to get to the chopper, right?
Yeah, there's the get to the chopper moment. That's great.
Get to the chopper, and then so they do have some sort of a sandbox area there, because the GM obviously have the players go off in a different direction or have different on the road encounters, but eventually they're going to have to get to the chopper, right? And so you kind of have a very clear endpoint that leads them into Adventure 2.
Yeah, so I feel like my book was way too easy to write because of that. There was no like, oh, well, what if they wanted to do X? It's like, well, then they die. The planet is overrun by a swarm. They're dead.
And it's a little bit easier to write as well because they're so low level. A lot of high level options that technomancers and mystics or even operatives and mechanics might have aren't really available to them. They're not gonna turn on cloaking devices and slip through the swarm lines.
Exactly. I think you have to think in like 3 dimensions once you get past level 4. You have to think it's like, well, why don't they just like fly up over everything? Everybody fly away and get away from this combat. So yeah, definitely easier at lower levels.
What else upcoming from you? Like, are you working on anything you can talk about, or you've already mentioned that Cosmic Crit's new season is going to start. You're going to do Attack of the Swarm.
That is my main focus right now, and it's crazy to say, but it's I mean, if you include me writing the first volume, we've been in production for season 3 for over a year now. I don't count that. Once it was written, we've been focused on season 2, and season 2 is going great. Against the Aeon Throne is so much fun, and we're in book 3 right now, which is going swimmingly. It's a ton of fun.
I think the Islani Empire is a great antagonist. My only regret is that we only got to do three chapters of it. I would have loved to have seen a longer AP.
I love the 3-chapter sections because you can focus in as much as I think people are going to love Attack of the Swarm. That does go in little different areas. You're not just fighting the Swarm like every single time. Having it focused and there being that Aslanti threat in all 3 books, as well as some other things mixed in. Just feels right. The 3-volume format, I really hope we get to see a lot more of, not just in Starfinder. I'd love to do Pathfinder adventures similar to like the Emerald Spire, kind of length, or what's the other one? There's some other just like longer than a regular adventure and shorter than an entire AP.
Right.
I think is an interesting amount of time, but yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I think Fate of the Fifth is going to be a ton of fun for us. We are currently working on our characters, so I'm working with the players to find out what they want to play, the backstories, how to incorporate that. That's kind of my big thing, is taking the pre-written adventures and taking the characters' ideas and trying to make it so there's mystery for the characters, like in their backgrounds somehow. That was a big part of Dead Sons, at least. And part of that was, it was a mystery for me and the audience as well, because I was writing a lot of that before the books had come out, months in advance, trying to find plot hooks and things of that nature. It was a little easier to do with Against the Iron Throne because we had the books beforehand. But I mean, that is what I'm working on right now. We're getting character sketches in. I'm very excited about. We'll be able to share those closer to the new year, I think, is when the season's coming. But besides that, we have our Patreon account for our super fans, our Crittermander fans. And we do a monthly stream, and so coming up with new ideas for that has been a lot of fun on Twitch. And just thinking up new things we can do on the Patreon takes up a good amount of time, more time than I would think.
We have some links to that stuff so that folks can follow that, both your Patreon and the Cosmic Crit itself.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you find us anywhere online, you'll find links to that as well. We're producing new episodes of original content in the Starfinder universe using our characters from season 1. So the Dead Sons characters that have played, and that just dives deeper into their background and kind of zips up some stories, finishes.
Moving on from level 11?
13, actually.
Level 13,
So they never got to play with their 13th level characters really during the adventure path.
Well, now I'm curious. So what do you think of high level play? How's that working out?
It is a lot of fun. They are Teflon. I can throw like the hardest things at them, and just because of the way 5-person parties kind of gel together, they can take them on. But yeah, it is dangerous. Usually players go down because both sides are doing so much damage.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it makes for very exciting play. It seems like when I first got the Starfinder core rulebook, the thing that was pretty evident was and the Alien Archive is that monster scaling was pretty perfected. I think, as far as versus the PC's power levels when they get up to a certain level. I just thought that was great, and the way the tools that GMs got for making their own monsters, especially, and keeping everything balanced, worked really well. I've made obviously a lot of monsters in my time, both work.
Starfinder. Like, as soon as I bought Starfinder in the Alien Archive, and then I went to like a pizza place, and I just made NPC monsters for 4 hours, and I learned. That's how I learned the system. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, that's a great tool for GMs. It's I mean, similarly in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they have some
that's right.
Pretty I'm sure we'll get some pretty awesome rules in the Game Master Guide in a similar way. But you can already tell they have that design in mind for the ease of GMs making their own content, which is awesome.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for coming. We've kept you busy for almost an hour, so I want to let you go. But it was a real pleasure.
No, pleasure's all mine. I told you before we started this, I can talk about Starfinder until the cows come home. So
also entomology or something. We didn't even get into that.
Yeah, no, please let's not. Bugs are gross.
Okay. And you're a librarian in Boston, is that right?
Yep. I'm in the Boston metro area and librarian, primarily working with young adults, which is 6th to 12th grade in there. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm a former academic. I'm a recovering English professor myself.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, that's all right.
I caused your kind a lot of grief in undergrad.
But thank you so much, and I would love. We're trying to make this a habit now that I'm on the Starfinder team, and I've been on the BAMF podcast for a while. I'd like to be doing sort of regular Starfinder shows with different guests and talking about different aspects of the game, and maybe doing some live play or something. Mm-hmm. So I would maybe have you back on later on if you'd be willing to do that.
Yes.
There you go.
No, you don't need to. You don't need to go and twist my arm on that. Okay, that sounds great.
All right, thanks, Patrick, and I hope we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, I think we are not live anymore.